My name is Federico, and just as a matter of people who do not know me well here, uh, and by the way, I want to thank Sergio Alberto for joining all the way from Costa Rica. So thank you, Sergio, and he comes here once in a while. Uh, but I welcome, of course, I want to thank everybody who's taking the time to listen to my talk during the holiday season, which is great. I collect mostly coinage from Costa Rica. I have my coin collection from Costa Rica, but I collect tokens mostly related to rural stuff. Things that have to do with coffee picking, agave picking, Mexico, or in California, I collect lumber tokens. I am interested in this topic just by virtue of the fact that I tend to collect tokens that have to do with rural activities, agriculture, in this case, forestry. So I've been collecting California forestry tokens for a while. And I just want to point out to this slide, which shows on the right a team of oxen carrying logs. These are redwood logs from the coast. We will talk a little bit about that later. And on the left, of course, we have the owl. And for those of you who are old enough to remember the conflict between the spotted owl in Northern California and logging, where people got hurt. People were very passionate about whether or not we should be cutting redwood old growth forest that was habitat for the spotted owl. And so, I just want to put that into context for this particular talk. And of course, the mighty, light, beautiful token on the right from the Westwood. The HS Anderson Westwood Company token. So we'll talk about that. So that's the outline of the talk. We will be talking about doing a brief introduction, a timeline of the forestry sector in California, and then where exactly and when was this activity, which, by the way, is still going on. It's just that it's not going to the degree and with the scale that it was going on before. California has moved on to do computer chips and other things. And then we're just going to be talking about the forestry companies and their economy as we move along. So what exactly are we talking about here is, I guess these pictures will tell you this is not a forestry class, although I used to teach one. That was one of the first classes that I started teaching at Cal. And what you see here is on the top two pictures, old growth redwood trees. The trees on the right have been charred by wildfire, as you can see there, but they withstood the wildfire, whichever wildfire it was. And what you're looking at on the right is a picture on the top right, a picture of secondary growth for redwood. This thing was cut before, and now these trees are not hundreds of years, probably 100 and something years. These trees that you see on the right. On the left, you see one of those classical pictures that we all have seen in booklets or internet, or when we go to museums in Mendocino or Point Arenas or any other place, any Quincy, of loggers harvesting wood and comparing the size of a human being with these mighty trees. At the bottom, you see the other tree species some of the other tree species that we have harvested in California over the years, the ponderosa pine and the sugar pine. What's the difference between the ones below and above? Without getting too much into details, the old growth redwood is excellent. It's a hardwood. It doesn't break easy. So it is done for homes and structures that are big. Of course, if you are rich enough, you can also do furniture or fences. So, today you can still buy redwood to do fences mostly. Sugar pine, however, and ponderosa pine are softer woods, excellent for furniture and cabinets and things like that. But redwood, it was used for other for things that needed to be strong. Okay, so I'm not gonna get too much here in terms of timeline, but I will say that Michael Wenner knows this well. Henry Mix founded Mendocino as a logging camp somewhere around 1851. Henry Mix was, we have talked about him in the context of Peruvian Metals, we can talk to him about the aunt of John Maynard Keynes, the banana baron of Central America. I think I gave a talk about him. I wrote a paper about him some time ago. And so he saw riches in the coastal redwood old growth forests to feed San Francisco's growth at the moment, fueled by the 49ers arrival. And so and to help San Francisco grow as a result of the gold rush. So the forestry sector also served as a plan B for those who could not make it on the mines, make it rich. They could still work in the growing forestry sector in California's north coast. Most of these companies that we're going to be talking about, believe it or not, are from money from back east, folks who purchase land and set up forestry companies. Mr. Mix being from New York himself, but settled in San Francisco by the time that he went to do business in what is known today as Mendocino. So they all play an important role, money from the East and the South. Why? Because the East and the South had a well-developed forestry sector. And so, but they didn't have trees. They have run out of trees for the most part. So they took their money to the West. If you got into trouble in San Francisco or anywhere else in California, close my door, then you were also, the North Coast and the forestry camps were a good place to hide, not to be found. Just sharing with you an article from August 18, 1946, where lumber workers are wanted at a particular rate, actually well paid. This is during a strike. We will discuss strikes a little bit later because the forestry sector had a revolving door when it came down to labor. And so the company is promising here good lodging and meals at reasonable prices. And our tokens that we'll see play a role into that. This was for the Northern Redwood Lumber Company in Corbell, Humboldt County, and of course with offices in San Francisco. So they were looking for folks to be part of crews or to operate machinery. So where was the, let me say something about the forestry sector. The forestry sector was one of the most important sectors, economic sectors in California. But it didn't take place just on the coastal northern, what we know as the redwoods. There are actually other places that we'll see later. So I decided in a very arbitrary way to divide the forestry sector activities in California in two areas: the coastal northern, which is Humboldt, Lassen, Butte, Mendocino County, Siskiyou, and the interior northern, which is Merced County, Stanislaus, Madera, and Tolume. And this is a list of the companies that you see on the different areas. There is a mistake here, of course, because this one here is listed as interior northern. It should be made a typo there. It should be northern coastal. The only difference is that this map shows is that the northern coastal, which is these ones here, include counties that are on the coast, Del Norte, Humboldt, and Mendocino. Whereas in the interior northern, there was no forestry activity, for example, in San Mateo, Santa Cruz, anywhere, Monterrey, a little bit, but most of the activities took place in those counties that I'm indicating there. So we'll be talking a little bit about that, about those different regions, if you will, in a second. So what did these companies have in common, the ones that we're going to be talking about? Well, they use railroads, flumes, and water to transport logs from the place where the tree was felled and cut for transportation to the sawmill. Most of these companies were completely integrated from the forestry, from the place where they cut the tree to the sawmill, and anything in between they control. That includes transportation. So that railroads, flumes, and water. Of course, oxen were prior to railroads, but with the advent of the steam engine, uh, oxen was quickly replaced by locomotives. They all had lumber camps. These lumber camps have company stores. There were a lot of them were towns completely integrated with schools, hospitals, churches, everything paid for by the company. Because the thing was, these were very isolated places. These companies needed the workers not to go anywhere else. So they had, again, company stores, churches. Some of them had even hospitals, if the worker was lucky enough, where there were actually very good medical facilities, and some of them, in others, there were no medical facilities. But all this to say, all this to keep the worker there, right? Because this was way out there, middle of nowhere. And again, they all became the most important sole employer in town. All this is shared with, say, wealthy tokens from, say, El Salvador, Guatemala, or Costa Rica, or Mexico. Or all this is shared with tokens from Yucatan, Mexico. It's the same principle, nothing more, nothing less. The idea is to keep the worker in place, working, 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 and providing everything you can in the process. So this is a classical token from the McLeod Lumber Company in Humboldt County. This is one of the largest. Again, we're starting with the northern coastal area. This is one of the largest companies ever in California. I had a chance to go to McLeod on a trip with Federico and my wife Angela, and we visit a few of the remnant places, or that you can still visit as camps. It controls 600,000 acres, which is a good chunk of land. And again, this was one of the most important meetings. But you know, Moise was well. If you oh, sorry about that. So it says Moise San Francisco there, Moise Company. A lot of these tokens were made by Moise. And McLeod has several. This is what the mill, one of the mills look like, the most important mill. The only thing that I want to notice here is that you see a lot of water. All these mills were located next to a water body. If they put the mill where there was no clear water body, what they will do is not a body of water close to it, then they will divert a river. They will just bring the water to the mill, so to speak. And what you see there is a person there managing or running the logs towards particular places so that there will be access, that will be delivered to where the logs will be processed. So this is the McLeod. You can see part of this if you go to McLeod today. Some of these structures are still in place. And there is a museum as well. More on the McLeod Company. What you see here is the reading room of the employee club. So employers could go there to read and rest. But I must say, most of the employers who took advantage of this were the administrative stuff. This guy here probably never went to the reading room, the one on the right, because he was a different kind of employee. But administrative folks and some management folks from the field will go to this reading room and relax a little bit. And as I said, on the left, what you see here is this big two-wheel horse-drawn, I would call it a vehicle, where they will attach these logs, and the logs will be moved from where the log was cut to where the engine was waiting. And you see on the right there, the bottom right is one of the engines. Companies, again, were fully integrated from the forest to the mill. And so companies own the trains and the railroads. McLeod Company has several camps. I went to this camp, Pondosa. There's still some ruins. You can see some structures in decay there. This particular was established in 1927 and closed in 1964. The one that you see, the second one, is the Camp 2. And this was for the club, a Camp 2 for 10 cents in merchandising. Some people speculate that what you see there is actually a specimen. It's not an actual token. The one on the right, the one on the left was obviously used. The one on the right, the one that has a golden color is barely used. And the reason is because the camp was operated only for 2 years or a year. So some people say that these are specimens. There are not many of those around. And other camps were White Horse, Widow Valley, and Camp Canyon. Feel free to ask questions as I move along. Now we are looking at the, I need to move this thing for a bit. Hold a second. Yeah. The Wheat Lumber Company, and what you see is their mill. And again, look at the water next to the next to the next to the mill right there. Oh, sorry, but that I don't know why that happened. Jesus. Okay, so not much to say except that again I want to bring out the commonalities between the companies. The Hutchinson Lumber Company, who is a very interesting company, also in in the Northern California in Oroville. It was established in 1920, but this was again Eastern money. I should have had this data here, but I forgot the name of the person. I should put it here. It was a large company. It employed 1,200 people on a town that was 3,500. So a good chunk of people was employed by the company. 100 million board feet of lumber is a ton of lumber in 1925, but I think they overstretched themselves, declared bankruptcy, and that's some of the tokens. This is the Ingle type of token. I don't know what the one means. The North Coast Westwood H.S. Anderson. Why? I don't have much information on this token to the right of the tokens, but the reason is, but they're beautiful tokens. When you hold them in your hand, they're heavy. They exist. I have them on 55, 25, and 10 denominations. I am not clear if this token is for a store that H.S. Anderson owned in Westwood, or if this was used on the fields. That's why I'm just putting it there for completion. If it was used for the crews that work the logging camps, in the logging camps, for example. But Westwood, by the time H.S. Anderson owned the store in Westwood, Westwood was a big town. And H.S. Anderson was by no means the main company in the town. But this is one of the most interesting. Again, the Red River Lumber Company. It was Minnesota money coming from Mr. T.B. Walker, who was a well-known railroad, lumber, etc. Individual, very rich person in Minnesota, and he bought large pieces of tracts of land in near where Mendocino is, and then the company just became it became the company town. So this is one of the railroad, one of the locomotives that they use. The mill closed shop in 1954. And as you can see there, if you ever known about Sunkist, the company was then bought by Sunkist. But it was one of the largest companies, the Red River Lumber Company in Northern California. This is the store in Lassen County, and these are some of the tokens that this is one of the tokens that they had. The Red River Lumber Company pool hall for employees. But this was also, there were tokens for this store as well. This is the church that the company built for the town. And there was a hospital too. The Red River Lumber Company had a lot of problems, like most of the forestry companies. They had a lot of problems with employees. and they were a revolving door. They wanted to have everything on these towns because they didn't want the workers to leave. But eventually, workers were either leaving or going on strike. And this is one of those instances. On June 13, 1938, the company hired private security to make sure that the employers showed up to work or else. Or because the strike, then the workers went on a strike, and the private security was hired to make sure that the company facilities were not damaged by workers in the strike. This was a violent particular event for this company in this area. We have the Hammond and Little River Redwood Company. Again, company town, and what you see on the left is a crew working for the company. These folks were working at the mill, and they were in charge of, according to what I found, it's called a yarding crew in Camp 7. What they do is mostly maintenance equipment. And the town that you see on the right is the Little River Redwood Company in Cranell, California, and that's what you see on the token here. They merged. The Little River Redwood Company merged with the Hammond Lumber Company, which again, Hammond Lumber Company was from Northern Virginia, I believe. The Northern Redwood Lumber Company. These are some of the most beautiful tokens. As you can see there, I only have the two side pictures for the 50-cent token. Is aluminum core with brass surrounding it. And then you have the $1 and the 5 cents versions there. And that's the office for the Northern Redwood Lumber Company. Again, those are the offices, right? The hospitals and everything else was something different. This is the Eel River Valley Lumber Company near Mendocino. Again, it was organized in 1883. Then it had offices in San Francisco, California, and that's the token that they had. Again, you can see Patrick, San Francisco. Both sides are the same, 21 millimeters. This is a very nice little token. You seldom see that token, actually. So transportation, water and locomotives, that was it. They used bodies of water to transport lumber. They usually paid. There was a crew that was paid. For example, on the right, on the photo bottom of the right, at the right bottom side, you will see all these logs moving around. This is the Navarro River. And if you were to show up at some point in time, there would be individuals moving those logs around because they would clog up the river as well. But there would be individuals moving the logs around, particularly if there was not much speed on the water. On the left picture, you see water moving along, and that's where the logs go. But locomotives and bodies of water. But surprise, there were other things, other ways to move. Northern Interior. We move on to the Northern Interior. We have one of the most iconic companies, Yosemite Lumber, Merced Falls, the Yosemite Lumber Company. That's the company store and offices. And if I get my thing moving again, see? And again, this is the token. 5 cents is the most well-known token for them. Again, aluminum core with brass. This is actually a very nice token when you have it in your hand. It's very small. It's only 18 millimeters, but it kind of feels good. So how did they move logs mostly in the interior northern counties, in Tuolumne, Merced, because there was not a lot of water there, right? So they came up with this idea of the incline, which solves the problem, how to get logs from where they are harvested to the mills when railroads are not the best option, or when water is not present. So some of the hills or the terrain was so very difficult and so much uphill that locomotives was not an option. So you have the incline. The incline, basically what you do is you build a track up the mountain. Cars are moving up and down via a cable. I will show you pictures in the next slide, or a rope. And then there were rollers on the track that keep the cable straight or in line. The inclines that were going down with logs will be also used, or the movement or the momentum via gravity will be used to move cars, empty cars, up the incline. So what does an incline look like? This is what an incline look like. You can see here, see if I get my pen. You can see here the track, if you follow right through. Sorry about those things there. I don't know why that is happening. My pen is crazy. And the incline, that means that the logs will be moving down on cars, and the empty cars will be moving up as the fully loaded cars will be going down. And this is when a more close up. So you see that there is a rope holding the cars, or a cable, a steel cable, that there are rollers that keep the car on the track, and the track will be moving down the hill while the empty cars will be moving on the alternative track up there. It was a complex thing, but a necessary thing to make sure that the logs got from where they were harvested to down where the mills were. Easter morning, the Standard Pickering Lumber Company. There's a company store for you, Mr. W.R. Pickering, who also was into railroads, mining, and real estate speculation. Bought a company here in California, and he had extensive, very, very extensive on the interior, what I'm calling the interior northern region in California. This was one of the biggest companies. Very nice tokens, big. Well, this one is 33 millimeters, but you also have the 10, 5, 25, and 50 denomination. Okay. So continue with the northern interior. You have the California Lumber Company. I must say ahead, before we look at the token down below, I cannot confirm that this token belonged to the California Lumber Company. It could very well belong to the, I don't know, whatever, Castillo, Leisure, whatever, I don't know, something else. But I bought it as a very rare from 1870s California Lumber Company token in Oxford, formerly known as Fresno Flats. The California Lumber Company was acquired by the Madera Flume and Trading Company, which brings me to the next mode of transportation in these areas for lumber, from where the trees are harvested to the mill. And then, of course, the MFTC, the Madera Flume and Trading Company, went bankrupt, and it was acquired by the Madera Sugar Pine Lumber Company, which is a well-known company, which is shown right here. And again, the tokens on the right. That's the company town, typical, with housing for workers here, all over, and the logs just traveling right in the middle of the place. Some of these towns were very well laid out, and some others were just as bad as the picture that you see here. This is what the flume is, another method of transportation for lumber. The flume is nothing than a V shape, V as in Victor, shape, wood structure that has water in the middle, where the logs will be traveling down towards where the mill was, or to where the train stations, the loading train stations were, so they will be taking elsewhere, back east, or San Francisco or Los Angeles by this time. Some of these flumes were 60 miles. In fact, two of them were 60 miles long. There was a competition between two companies to decide which company had the longest flume. And what you see on the photo of the right is folks building some sections of the flume, because of course, it's not that it was a flat incline from up the top of the mountain to down below, but there were valleys and peaks and whatnot. So the flume had to be built around these sort of particularities of the land. So you see these folks building the flume. The flume, these are the edges of the flume. This and this here will be like this part and this part, and then they will complete the structure this way, and then water will be traveling there. This was deemed unsafe at some point in time, but bankruptcies took care of that. There was no much regulation because this flume stopped working when the company went bankrupt in the 1930s. The Hutchinson Lumber Company was located in Oroville, Butte County, so it was kind of in both regions. It was originally called the Fair Mills Lumber Company, with then purchased by Hutchinson Lumber from West Virginia. Again, West Virginia was running out of trees. A mining and lumber company came to the west to the rescue to set up shop on these lands. So my conclusions, actually, I'm going to say one thing here before I go. Actually, let's go this way. The forestry sector in California has suffered a decline in terms of the total output and the value of that output over time, basically because you have new construction materials that replace wood. And anything from board to plastics to concrete and steel. So also cheap wood from Chile and other countries have made this sector struggle a little bit. Environmental regulations is one of the reasons that we don't see a lot of logging in California, as the spotted owl controversy indicates. The consumer demands on forest products. People are now demanding that they will be sustainably grown and blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So that means that there's a longer period of time for you to harvest. You can no longer do clear cutting. I was going to include a few pictures of clear cutting, but I decided not to, because clear cutting used to be the norm. Now you have to do selective harvesting, tree by tree. Not only the tree has to be healthy, and the tree has to meet certain requirements, like the basal area. The basal area is the width and the height of the tree using a formula, and you need to have a particular basal area that you need, because otherwise it's not economically feasible to harvest. And or financially, rather, not economically. That doesn't make sense financially. On top of that, you have to have environmental regulations. You cannot cut trees now close to certain bodies of water, and so on and so forth. So all these, of course, limits the forestry output. Forests are renewable, but not in the short run. And what that means is that, yes, people say, well, trees grow. Why don't we just plant more trees? And then we just harvest more in the future. But the problem is there are some species that take 40, 50, 60 years. So the only people willing to invest in forestry are pension plans. In California, for example, has a huge amount of money invested in forests, because it's a good way to invest in a long-term, with a long-term time horizon, right? But if you are an investor, a regular investor, you probably don't want to put your money on forestry, because there is no instant gratification here. So those are some of the reasons that we don't see much of forestry in California. We have a lot of forests. Let me make no mistake. We have a lot of national forests that are harvested. with permits. Private companies harvesting in national forests and some state forests, but we are not even close to what we used to have. Also, agricultural tourism or rural tourism has taken over. People make more money selling you a cabin in Quincy and you enjoying a good hot chocolate and walking around doing hiking than the actual selling of trees. So with that, I end my presentation. I want to thank you for your time, and I will take any questions.
Thank you, Federico.
Yes.
Very informative.
Federico, have you thought about including Pacific Lumber Company in your collection?
Yes. No, I have them all.
Okay.
I have those tokens. Actually, I have those tokens, but when I was preparing this presentation yesterday, I had to finish it by yesterday because today I was hosting a friend of mine and I didn't have time to prepare the photos. So I say, hell with that. I'm just not going to include the Pacific Lumber Company. But yes, they are very important. They're very, very important players.
Hey, I grew up in Humboldt County, and the Pacific Lumber Company was in most people's lives, and it was still a company-controlled town, including a hospital and recreation area. And if you retired, they had a private retirement fund, and all their retirees, if they wanted to learn how to play golf, they could go to the company headquarters and say, I want to learn how to play golf, and Pacific Lumber would buy your clubs and pay your and then it was sold out to other people, and all of that was gone.
Yes.
Because
Pacific Lumber and Pickering were two companies that are known to take care of their employees, like you say, right? Other companies just had very lousy living conditions. They were just extracting as much as they could from labor, particularly in the early years, 1850, 1860, 70. Conditions were very, very bad. But again, yes, no, I should have included Pacific Lumber, but I was too lazy. I mean, I ran out of time yesterday. All day long I've been elsewhere. So, yeah. But thank you for bringing that up, Bill.
Michael?
All right, Jeff. Sorry, Jeff. Oh.
So, Federico, thank you. Very interesting talk. Now, you and I have talked a lot about this kind of thing in our day jobs, about forest fires and climate change and all. And one of the things that really is an issue is that the forests in California and throughout the West, because of forest management policies, have caused the forest to be too dense. There are too many trees, too much ground growth. And what I don't understand, and maybe you can help on this, is it apparently isn't economical to go in and thin the forest. And that the demand for pulp and for lumber is not enough, that the expense is too high. And so we end up with forest fires that are too hot, that burn in an unnatural way and tend to get very large.
So to that comment, I will add that there was a paper published yesterday by a Berkeley forestry fire specialist, where they had a 20-year experiment going on in one of the university-owned forests. And they demonstrate that at least for that type of forest on that particular location, thinning and burning actually pay to minimize. There are good activities to do to minimize the impact of wildfire on forest health. So that controversy just will keep on going. This is like, do you want to coin a slab, or do you think the coin shouldn't be a slab? Right. This is one of those things that is a conversation that never ends. To this study, there will be a counter study probably soon enough. I personally think that we should be thinning and doing prescribed burning on some of the forests. That's my personal take, and that's what I see in the literature.
Well, we did our part. We cut a tree out of the Sierra for Christmas. So I did have a token question, and it's about the McLeod tokens and a few others that that had a number on them.
Uh-huh.
And early on in your talk, and I think those are probably tool checks and not trade tokens per se. And clearly, some are trade tokens, ones that say good for something. But the
Yeah.
ones with number are almost certainly some sort of inventory control for tools.
Okay, so that is one option. The other option is an employee number that gives him access to something, not necessarily a tool. So I agree with you. There could be tool checks, but there could also be employee numbers that where they go to the store and they have an established credit line of credit or something, and they check on that, and then off you go.
Oh, so it could be some kind of a credit card then.
That is correct.
A charge coin. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense too, I guess.
Mhm.
But the
Well,
hole on it, the ones with
I-
the holes, sort of like the tool hung on a hook, and then when you took a hook, took out the tool, they put the token on the hook.
Okay.
And
I
that number would be you, of course. It would be associated with you, so they know that number 530 or whatever it is has the wrench or something.
Michael, a lot of employees put a string on their tokens and they hang them around their necks to make sure they didn't get lost, or they put them on their pocket and they attach it to their belts. This is a well-known practice as well. So
Well, certainly, if the holes are punched after manufacture, that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I suppose if their hold as made, you might not be able to tell.
Correct.
I visited a mine in Canada that was sort of turned into a museum, and they still had what we would call their tool check board with all the tokens on it. But in that instance, when you went on shift, you took your token with your number, and when you came out of the mine, you put it back on the board, and that allowed them to keep track of whether or not anybody went missing.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, Jeff has a
Yep.
question.
Yeah, thanks. Federico, very impressed with your extensive knowledge on this topic. It really shows through. Up here in Washington, we've had a few lumber companies come and go, and I'm curious, I would assume that the companies up here also had tokens, and if they did, I'm wondering if you collect any from Washington or Oregon.
I do not. I'm sure there exists, but I don't have any token, I only have lumber tokens from California. Yeah. I have lumber tokens from Mexico, and I think I have a couple from Texas, but just because they look good. So just because I like them, I mean, you collect things, you gotta buy stuff that you like. So
Yeah.
I think I have a couple from Texas, but no, not particularly from other states. There are a lot. By the way, Stephen Hiding, some of you might know Stephen Hiding, is selling at this point in time the largest lumber token collection ever. This guy has been selling lumber tokens on eBay for 2 years, for 2 months. I don't think he's done with that, but they're from Virginia, Texas, Louisiana, Missouri, so on and so forth. So, yeah, but there are plenty of tokens from those states. Thank you,
Okay.
Jeff.
Yeah. Mike?
Oh,
Yes. Hi, Federico. Gosh, I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you. I have a question about a so-called dollar I have or a token, and it's not related to a specific company town, but it says Woodmen of the World. You guys may know about this. Bill Hyder's probably seen them before. Is that a fraternal organization for people that were in the lumber business, or it's just they just took that as their mascot or whatever? I don't know. Maybe someone can answer that
Fraternal
question.
organization. You did not have to be it was not related to the lumber company per se. It was a fraternal organization.
Thank you.
I have seen them. I think I have 2 of those. Those are beautiful. Some of those are very nice.